Hey guys, welcome to today's video in which we're going to be talking all about how you can achieve your first dip. Now with calisthenics there are several fundamental exercises and dips is one of the pushing exercises that are really important to learn so you can progress to further skills in the future. So whether you're a beginner or whether you've been doing calisthenics a while, today we're going to go through the correct form, some progressions for any level and also some mistakes to avoid. All right, let's get straight into it and we're going to start with the correct form for a dip. So I'm going to start talking about form on the parallel bars because a lot of it is transferable across to a bench if you do a bodyweight dip over there as well. So when you get onto the bars, you want to have your hands by your hips or about shoulder width apart, and then you want to pull your shoulders back and down so your chest is nice and proud. Similarly to push-ups, you don't want your gaze to be directly in front of you. You actually want it to be several feet on the floor in front of you. So you're going to be looking slightly down on an angle, and then from there you're going to tilt your chest forward slightly. To start the dip, you're going to bend your elbows and you're going to bring your chest down towards the bars, and you're going to aim to come just slightly further than 90 degrees. So your shoulders should be just below your elbows, and then you're going to push back up. Before we do that, I just want to note that my elbows are pointing to the back of the room rather than flaring out, but we will come back to this point a little bit later. From there, you're going to push back to the starting position, and here I just want to look at the range of motion. So whether you should lock out or not is a bit of a contested point with dips, but for me, I like to focus on not locking out my elbows, but more so focusing on making sure that my triceps are really engaged and making sure that I'm standing nice and tall, pushing that bar away. Okay, let's talk about some progressions, and we're going to start at the very beginning. So when I was a beginner, this is where I started. I started with bench tricep dips. Now here I've got my legs bent and all the same form cues apply. So you're just going to bend your elbows towards the back of the room, come to just past 90 degrees and then push back up and make sure you're engaging. To progress this a little bit further, you can drop the height of what you're pushing from, so you can find something a little bit lower like a staircase, and if you want to make it even harder, then you can elevate your feet onto a surface. I'm going to use this bench as an example, but you could use some parallettes, a step or a stool that you might have, even your coffee table, anything at all, but this will definitely take it up a notch. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next progression, which is going to be on the parallettes. So obviously I have a piece of equipment. I never used to have these, and I used to have to go to the gym or to the park, but you could potentially use a pair of sturdy chairs if you have them at home. And for the beginning, when you're progressing through, these should be perfectly fine. So if you do have some, don't stress, but parallettes are also a fantastic investment too. Anyway, back to the progression. So we're going to start with leg assisted dips. So this is going to get your body used to the movement, but you have the option of changing how much weight you're putting into your upper body. So obviously you're going to support your weight through your feet. You can put more or less, and that really means that you can scale up or scale down the difficulty of the exercise. As always, the same form cues are going to apply. So you're going to be thinking about the range of motion. You're going to be thinking about bringing your shoulders back towards the back of the room, and you're going to tilt slightly forward. You can actually just have your feet directly underneath you. I just didn't in this clip because of the parallettes, but this is a fantastic entry point into training. Now, obviously these parallettes are quite close to the ground, so I can do this easily. In the gym, this might not necessarily be the case. If that does happen, then this is another option for you. You can use band-assisted dips instead. So here we're going to use a resistance band underneath our knees to support our body weight. Now the thickness of the band is going to dictate how much assistance you're going to get. So here I'm using a relatively thin band, and that's not going to give me a huge amount of assistance. If you use a thicker band, then that's going to give you much more assistance. So when you're starting out, you'll probably start with a thicker band, and then you're going to gradually reduce the size of that band until you can do bodyweight dips. I just place the band over the bars and then just hold it in place with my hands and then just hop on and start performing the dips. So you'll get used to this after a little while, and with a lot of calisthenics you'll probably end up using bands, so you'll get a lot more confident. But again, all the form cues apply, and just try not to let the band dictate the movement, rather you are controlling it and really thinking about that range of motion again. So once you feel like you're confident with those progressions, you can move on to eccentric dips, or you may hear this termed negatives. So here what we're doing is just the downward phase of the dips, and we're going to try and control it, really focus on our form, and aim to come down with between 4 to 8 seconds being your maximum. Eccentric training is a fantastic tool for a lot of skills in calisthenics, so something that's definitely a useful thing to have in your toolbox. However, it is very, very taxing on your muscles, so you'll probably find that you're going to reduce the amount of reps you're doing, but you could always increase the sets, and just make sure you're giving yourself adequate rest time in between your sets as well. As you can see, I'm just going to go down nice and slowly and controlled, and when I get to the bottom, place my feet on the floor and come back to the top and go again. All the same form cues apply, so focus on that range of motion and also on your form, and then hopefully in no time you will be hitting the final progression, which is bodyweight dips. Of course, there are ways to make bodyweight dips a lot harder, but ultimately this is what we are training for, the full bodyweight dip. So all the same form applies. Really, once you get here, it is just a celebration of how hard you have worked, and you can really start to perfect everything and then start to learn some of the more fun skills or versions of dips that there are. Okay, we're going to quickly run through some of the common mistakes that are often seen, and the first one we've already spoken about, which is just that full range of motion. So what you want to aim for is bringing your shoulders down further than your elbows, just slightly, so just past 90 degrees, and then making sure at the top you're not locking out your elbows, but you're getting that full extension. Next up is flared elbows, which is really, really common, especially for beginners, and we also see this a lot in push-ups, but unfortunately it causes a lot of undue pressure on your elbow joints and also your shoulder joints, and therefore it could potentially cause injury in the future, and it's just not the correct form either. Make sure you are bending your elbows towards the back of the room, and if you find that you can't avoid flaring your elbows, it might be worthwhile just dropping down a progression and then working on your strength and then moving up. Last up is tempo, another really important one. It can be really tempting to go quickly and just use momentum to get yourself there, but instead try to focus on controlling the movement as much as possible. As a guide, go for a tempo of 2-0-2-0, so 2 seconds down, no hold at the bottom, and then 2 seconds back up. And this is a good place to get to. Alright guys, just before the end of the video, I thought we should have a quick chat about some of the expected timeframes in terms of how long it should take to learn a skill like this, and also some of the tips that will help you along the way. Now, when I started out, as you guys know, I was a complete beginner, and I started with the tricep dips using a chair and then my windowsill, and I really struggled with that. And from that point to being able to do one full dip on a parallel bar, it was probably well over a year. So time frame wise, if it feels like it's taking a long time and you're not seeing progress, just keep consistent with your training and eventually your body will adapt, even though it might feel like it's not going to. In terms of tips I can give you, always focus on your form over how many reps you can actually do. So really focus on perfecting the form at whichever level you're at, and then when you can get to around 8 to 12 reps and consistently do that with really good form, then it's probably time to move up to the next level. Now, throughout this video, we've spoken about the form cues that we want to try to attain, but we've also spoken about some of the common mistakes, and one of the most common mistakes is not having a full range of motion. So everything else might be correct, but you're just not quite hitting the depth in those dips. And so I would suggest working on having that full range of motion and avoiding having your elbows flare out. That means having strong shoulders and having good shoulder mobility as a really key focus to your training. Again, do not worry if this feels like it's taking a long time. All good things that are worthwhile do take time, and so just keep progressing at your own pace and making sure that you're working to progressively overload yourself as well, but managing your form, and eventually you'll get to where you want to go. It's a long journey, but as always with most calisthenic skills, it is so worth it. Alright guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if there's any more skills that you would like me to make videos on, and otherwise I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.